Can you hear that? Is that the sound of drums I hear in the distance? Have no fear, spectators, that's actually not drums at all. In truth, it's the steadily increasing beating heart of a collector close to obtaining their Grail. But who is this collector? Maybe it's you. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's a brilliantly bearded co-host with his fingertips on another Silver Age beauty. We may never know. Hello again, spectators, and welcome to the latest episode of Spectales. I'm your host, Jake, alongside Mr. Top Gun himself, Jesus.
Well, just to reiterate, my actual call sign would be Morbius, and every time I would go into battle in my F-22 jet, I would say it's Morbin time, because that's what one does when their call sign is Morbius.
That's perfect. I've never really thought about what call sign I would have. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but nothing really comes to mind. What's that?
Cornstalk.
Yeah, I'd be the corn stalker. And then while you're saying it's Morbin time, I'd go all like it's stalking time, but that would actually seem creepy. So maybe I wouldn't say that.
That's actually perfect, man. That's right on the nose.
If this is your first time listening to Spectales, thank you and welcome to the show. Spectales is a comic book podcast that asks collectors and creators, what's your Grail tale? Each week, we explore new stories about the comic book grails we love, the epic journeys behind how they were obtained, and how they inspired new creativity.
We also dive into some comic book speculation and how, as collectors, we can help the hobby pay for itself.
If you're a regular listener of the show and would like to show us just how much you love what we're doing, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Or if you love the show so much that you can't get enough of us, you can get even more content by subscribing to the Spectales Patreon for $3.99 per month. We have a bonus show we do monthly called Floppies, a monthly newsletter, and an exclusive book club.
If you want to learn more about our Patreon, you can use the link in the show notes or head over to patreon.com and search Spectales Podcast. With that said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this week's episode. This week, we've got a very good friend and comic YouTuber, Paul Cook, joining the show to tell us all about his comic book compound somewhere in the New England area. So insert random musical reference here and follow that up with an obscure movie quote. This is episode 44.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectales, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Thanks again for tuning in, spectators, for the latest episode of Spectales. Joining us for the first time on Spectales is our good friend from Sector 2815 on YouTube, possibly the kindest man in comics. I'm talking about Paul Cook. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm just so thrilled. I'm glad to see that my letter writing campaign finally worked. Seriously, thank you so much for joining us. For having me.
And Jake, when you say that, man, you have to say trademark, or copyright, that the kindest man in comics, copyright, or trademark, because that's exactly what Paul is, man. Thank you for joining us, Paul. Really appreciate you getting on here and talking comics with us and sharing some Grail tales with us.
The pleasure is all mine.
Absolutely. And for those of you who have not listened to Spectales before, we have 3 basic segments. We always start every episode off with the recent pickup segment, where we're going to talk about something we recently picked up or read and or both. Then we go into the Grail Tales segment. This is our favorite segment of the show, where we're going to ask Paul here to tell us a Grail tale. This is something about a book that he holds above everything else, or a collectible or something along those lines that is very important to him. And after that, we'll close the episode with some speculation. We're going to talk about some books that you might want to consider picking up because the value may go up. All right. Sound good?
Sounds fantastic.
All right. I'm gonna have to edit out that blank space there.
Leave it so people can see how awkward we are in real life, man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just the kings of awkward right here. You know what? I kind of forgot to do something else, so let's just keep the awkward rolling. Paul, I forgot to talk about your YouTube channel. Sector 2815, you've been running that for, are we going on a year yet, Paul?
It will be a year in July.
A year in
Almost
July. And I, for those people out there who are listening who recognize the name, good on you. But Paul, I'm going to have you tell me how you came on the name Sector 2815, because I think I know the story about it or why, but I'm going to have you say it again for all those listeners who want to know.
Sure. My favorite character when I was growing up was Green Lantern. And for those of you who do not know, the Green Lantern of Earth is the sector that Earth is in within the Green Lantern mythos is Sector 2814. So I thought to myself, just in case there's anything copyrighted, I'm going to go one sector over, and I'll do Sector 2815. So just to stay away from any potential trouble, I will go one sector over and go from there instead.
So have you named your planet then? Because if you're not on Earth, right? What planet are you from, Paul?
If I had a dime for every time somebody asked me that question. I have not, I'm open to name suggestions. I have not named my planet yet.
Well, I mean, the obvious one is Paul's planet, because I mean, you're laying claim to it.
Paul's kind planet. I like that. There you go.
The kindest planet in the universe. How's that?
Trademark. TN.
Awesome. And Paul, what? So we Jesus and I participate on your channel. At least we try to do once a month if we can, and you know it hasn't worked out recently, but I think it's been a little over a month now. But I know you have some other shows, but the show that we regularly will participate in is Name That Key. And where we play a game, we go around the horn. There's about 3 to 5 of us, depending on the Wednesday. And it's every other Wednesday, right, that you run this show?
Correct.
And it's kind of like 20 questions, but with comic books. And the guests on the show each take turns asking a question, a yes or no question, where the person whose book it is answers, and you get 10 questions, give or take. And the audience, the viewers, will throw out questions as well. And it's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway? You like, Paul, you distribute points, but they don't really matter because we end up arguing over who won anyway.
Exactly. And it was kind of funny because I remember the first time we did it, if you guys recall, was the first time we went through the entire hour and a half, and I forgot to press record in StreamYard, and so it didn't record anything, and so it was that was kind of like our pilot episode, so to speak, or whatever, and it went from there. But I am just so happy, whenever you guys are able to come on, because and just listening to this podcast all the time, because you guys have just an incredible chemistry, and the guests you have are just so interesting. Well, up until this point, we'll see what happens today, but you guys just knock it out of the park every time. So it's just a pleasure having you guys on. So
look at this. We were talking about Paul's show and how much we enjoyed his show, Jesus, and then he turned it around on us and made it about our show again, because he is once again the kindest man in comics. Trademark. Yep. Paul owns that.
Yeah, he does, man. And that's why, it's also so fun to get on there, because he allows us to say we won, when he's, the real winner every time, because he has the dopest books on there, man. Like when, I don't know, the first time we were on there, it was crazy. I need to go back and look at that episode. But it's so much fun. It's so much fun, always winning, always being the champion, it's just, it never fails to be fun for me. So.
And the disagreement continues. All right. Well, Paul, we'll get back to your channel on YouTube and where everybody can find it towards the end of the show. But I think it's about time we roll into this first segment.
Recent pickups.
The recent pickups segment. That's right. And Jesus, you always lead the charge. So what do you got?
So I'm going to talk about two comic books right now. One I have in front of me. One I couldn't find. I read it, but I couldn't find it. But the first one I want to start off with is this book that you put us on, Jake, called Ghost Cage.
Yes.
And it's from Nick Dragotta and Caleb Goner as a co-writer, and Nick Dragotta also did the art on it. And it's this really weird book that has kaiju in it, has some environmental stuff in it, which is a really interesting take on stuff. And it's also, you and I have talked about this, Jake, off podcast, off air, that it's kind of like it's in black and white. So right off the bat, it's something different. The art is different because you have to do different stuff with black and white ink. You don't get, to play with shades or shadows as much or as in your face, I guess you could say, but it still has some really awesome artwork in it. And it's because it was inspired, I guess, by manga. And, manga's in black and white and they read it from back to front in however they read it. But it's a pretty cool book, pretty interesting. It's way different. But it has kaiju and it has fights and it has, different plot points going and you're kind of interested in it. It's a good pace and it's really like entertaining. So that's all I can say about it. I recommend it. I know Jake recommended it. I really enjoyed it. So that's the first pickup. And it's also, I read it. So it's pretty good. And the second one I want to talk about is Twig. Twig, I don't know when it came out, maybe 2 weeks ago, but I picked it up on your comic book day.
Yep.
It's from, what is it? Scotty, what's his name? Scotty
Young.
Scotty Young.
Yeah, Scotty Young. And it's this really weird, the art is very, I don't know, I don't want to say childlike, but it is kind of childlike.
There's an animated or like feel to it, or a cartoonish feel to the art.
Yeah, but the story is a little bit more serious, and the cliffhanger at the end of the first one is really interesting. I will say on that one, though, as far as pacing, it was a lot slower for me. It was building up. I'm glad it's by Scotty Young because he has a big name and he can do that. But it was just really slow, but interesting nonetheless. And it's still, I'm going to give it at least another 2 or 3 more issues before I make a decision if I'm going to keep with it. But so far, it's pretty interesting to me.
I think we described, so I haven't read Twig. It's on my list, but we described A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance in a kind of similar way with the first issue, where it was very slow and there wasn't a ton of plot, but that we had said Rick Remender was such a big name that he had the ability to draw this story out, and he knew he wasn't going to get chopped off after 4 issues.
Yeah.
And when we had Andre Lima Araujo on, I don't even remember what episode that was. That was probably close to 20. But when we had him on, he even said that they had a full story arc and that they had drawn it out purposefully, right? They wanted this big, slow build. And I think it's been paying off. I don't know if you've been catching up on it, but it's really moving now.
Issue 3 or 4 on that. But I remember when we had him on, it had just come out and he was drawing issue 7, I believe, at the time. And so he did say that they were way ahead on what they were doing. And it was a slow burn, he called it as well. And I think Twig is like that too. And I also think that it's good to have these bigger names be able to do that because we're not necessarily used to this slower pace, right? We want to see action. We want to see the plot moving. We want to see cool art or something different on it. So it's kind of, refreshing to see something a little bit slower. Like, okay, where like you can see the plot points, you can see the world building a little bit, you can see some cool artwork, but there's payoffs. And so that's why, like I said, like any other thing, and that's the other thing too with the name. Any other person, I'm like, man, what is this? What are we getting to with this Twig? But because it's got a young, cool artwork, okay, I'm gonna give it some time. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for maybe smaller, creators, smaller publishers, because maybe they don't get the leeway, which sucks. But at the same time, I have so much to read, so it's like you have to grab the attention of the reader. So, but those are my 2 pickups, man. Ghost Cage number 2, I recommend it. Twig, I can't say I recommend it. It was interesting, it was entertaining, but I still have to read more on it to see how it is. But interesting read so far.
All right, well, let's move on to Paul. Paul, have you got a recent pickup, something to share with us?
I do. I have 2 as well, if that's okay.
That is quite all right.
The first one I have is I picked up is one of my favorite issues. One of my favorite comics is called Once and Future. I don't know if you guys have ever read this or not.
I've not read it, but I'd like to. I've actually heard a lot about it.
I think our friend Cookie has recommended that to us from Just a Little Podcast.
Yes, he has.
Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora, who I think Dan Mora is one of the hardest working guys in comics. He's the only person that I know of that's illustrating 2 comics every single month right now. Right now he's doing Once and Future, and he's doing World's Finest for DC.
Yeah.
As well as numerous covers that he does as well. But this is if you enjoy like Arthurian legend. It has to do basically Once and Future because of the Once and Future King, the legend of King Arthur. So it has at least one King Arthur, maybe multiple King Arthurs. Kieran Gillen actually plays around with the fact that there's no set, there's no one history or legend of King Arthur. There are multiple legends. So he deals with that. They recently brought in Robin Hood. They have a location in here that you guys will appreciate. It's called the Grail Castle.
Oh, hey. Nice. We should live there.
Ours is trademark, so now we have to. No,
there you go.
Now we have to take legal action. Damn it!
But this is just a fun read. Week in, and I mean month in and month out. And again, if you really like fantasy and Arthurian legend and things like that, I think you would really enjoy that. So
yeah, that sounds awesome.
And then the other one I picked up was just actually this week. It's called 8 Billion Genies. I don't know if you have heard of this or not, but it's by Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. It just came out this week. It basically has to do with exactly like it says. In the course of the story, suddenly every single person on Earth is given a genie. But this genie can only satisfy one wish, as opposed to most genies, you can give 3. This genie only has one wish, and it kind of starts playing with the fact, well, what if my wish goes against what your wish was? And there are there's it's set in a bar for the most part. Most of it happens in a bar, and
as it would, right?
Exactly. The wish that the bar maker makes kind of affects what other people wish as well. So it really is just a great read, from start to finish. It's a quick read. It's not something that, it's not real heavy or anything, but it's just fun. And I think the concept is great. What if everybody had their own personal genie and they would satisfy, one wish?
My one wish would be to torture Jake every day, but in a light-hearted way, like make him choose one thing or another every day. That'd be my wish.
I would wish for a 6.5 white pages Hulk 181. Wait, no, hold on a minute. I think I already have one in my closet. I guess I'm completely fulfilled, guys. I don't need anything.
Oh man, my wish is still better. I like it.
Paul, what would you wish for? You get a genie. One wish. Don't say peace on earth. I know you want to do that as a really kind human, but no peace on earth.
I would probably do something like wish for, like Action Comics #1 or Detective Comics 27. I would be totally selfish that way.
Good. Well, I'm glad. So that's nice. Wait, so actually curious. So as a Green Lantern fan, you would go straight for the Action Comics 1 though.
No, I think I would do All American 16, which is the first appearance of the Golden Age Green Lantern.
Ooh, see, oh, that's a nice one. What is what's a price point on that book right now? If you want to get a low grade,
it's a good. One of the things is there's actually less of those than there are of Detective Comics 27s and Action Comic #1s. It's a very, very low number of those that exist. So you're talking for a low grade, you're talking easily in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Now that's still surprising. I mean, isn't it? Yes, Superman and Batman, obviously, top of the most popular, but from a collection standpoint, I mean, Green Lantern is a huge, huge, huge DC hero. Very unique, right? Very unique hero. and then you're saying that it has less. I mean, you said it yourself, more scarce than the other books. Then
I
you
didn't
know.
put it exactly that way, but yes, it certainly was implied.
So I would assume it'd be more expensive, or not more expensive than those two, but more expensive than what it's going for. I mean,
Yeah. It's I would say it's easily, I haven't checked recently, but it's easily probably 500 to 600,000 in a high grade, $500 to $600,000 probably.
Well, it doesn't
Without
sell
taking
very
it.
often from what I can see.
Right.
And this is
Exactly.
so this
Like I
is
said,
the
one of its selling things is that there's virtually you never see one in the wild.
oh man. Man, and you know what? If you could get somebody to sell it to you for cover price, not that that happens that often, but like at a garage sale or something like that, 10 cents is all it would cost you. But yeah, you're still looking at, oh, I don't know. I mean, there's only it looks like there is one 4.0 on eBay right now. If just for a cool $225,000.
oh my God.
The only time I've ever actually seen one, and it wasn't in person, obviously, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Golden Age Guru.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
He had a copy that he had in one of his videos that he showed.
Wow. Was he selling it?
No, I don't believe he was. No.
Mm.
Oh, well, good for him. That's certainly a rare comic. I can't say I've ever seen one in person either.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with my recent pickup, and it is not a comic book today, everybody. I normally, of course, will do a comic book. I think this is the first time I'm doing something that wasn't a comic book, but I received a gift from my son, and it is comic related. It was for almost no reason at all. He just came home one day and said he found something for me at the store. And it does connect to another gift he had gotten me for my birthday last year. And this is the Incredible Hulk. It is an action figure.
Very nice.
This is Marvel Legends. It's a Kenner. I don't know what the height is on this thing. I don't know. It looks like it's like 3.5 inches tall or something like that.
That's probably about right.
It says it was produced in 2021 by Hasbro, but Hasbro must own Kenner because they've still got the Kenner logo on the front. But it goes hand in hand with another gift he had gotten me for my birthday last year, which was the Captain America 3.5 inch tall man by Kenner. And yeah, so I don't know. My son, I've mentioned this before. So he collects Star Wars, Clone Wars figurines, and so he gets much more into collecting the toys. He likes getting them original in box, things like that. And he had noticed that there was a gap in my collectibles that didn't include any toys. So first he got me Captain America because he knows that's one of my favorite characters. And then he said that he was at the store one day. He saw the Hulk was there and he basically just slipped it into the, you know what? Now that I think about it, I probably paid for these anyway, because he said he slipped it into the shopping cart. And then my wife paid for it, but it all comes out of the same account. So I guess I bought myself this Hulk figurine. Now I'm just realizing that now. But so recent pickup, it was a gift. It was at least a nice thought from my son, and I wanted to share that.
I mean, that's pretty cool, man. I think we just gave one away in the monthly LK for our Patreons, a Morbius figure. And I've always felt that for me, there was a spot in the figures too. Like, I don't want to collect, like I collect comic books, but there are some cool figures that people share that are like, man, that's pretty dope. I'd love to have one of those. And then I look them up and I'm like, okay, well, maybe not right now, but eventually.
Yeah, some of them can get pretty expensive, but you're right. I mean, I have a few figures and things like that. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole that you can just go down and never come out of.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not unhappy there, are you? If you fall down that rabbit
not
hole?
at all. I'm making action figure angels.
Nice. All right. Well, that's going to complete the recent pickup segment, but that only means we're moving on to the
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale.
the Grail Tale segment. And Paul, I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. You, honestly, I don't know half the books you own, but I know that you own an entire storage facility, right? It's not just a unit, it's the whole facility full of comic books, right?
Yes, I do. I have, I'll explain it quickly. I used to live up in Connecticut. Now I live in Orlando, Florida. And I had to, as part of the business that I work for, I actually ended up moving from Connecticut to Florida. And I had to do it rather quickly, within like just a couple of weeks. So what I did was, even before I had moved, I had so many comics because I have about 30,000 comics in my collection. I had a storage unit that I had everything in. And since I had a storage unit and I had to move rather quickly, I said to myself, okay, you know what? I need to move my furniture. I need to move everything, everything that I need to take with me, and then someday I will come back and I will move everything back down. But almost immediately when I got up, when I came south, within about a year or so, the pandemic hit and nobody was traveling anywhere and things like that. So last June was the first time I actually got back to my storage unit, and there's literally comics that go back to that I collected that go back to the early 70s, late 60s or whatever, and I have collected forward from there. So last June I went back and I started to go through I have about 130 long boxes, that I started going through, and I just started picking out things that I knew, were of value, and started bringing them back down to Florida with me. And some of them I've sent off to CGC to get, to get graded and things like that. But I still have a whole bunch more that I haven't gotten to because I want to make sure I want to go through every single comic because I don't remember everything that I collected, 45, 50 years ago. So I still have about half of the collection to go through. And there are some things that I know that I have there. So these are like, specs in waiting almost,
Nice.
that I'm waiting to get to. Like I know that I have, 2 Ultimate Fallouts #4 that I have that are in the collection. I know that I have Detective Comics 349, which is the first appearance of Batgirl. I know that I have first Poison Ivy in Batman. I know that I have that. So I'm going to go back probably this summer and at least do the second half. And then as soon as I can get, save up a little bit of money, I will then pay because it'll cost, a minor amount of money to move them all down. Because moving isn't cheap, especially with the way with gas now at almost $5 a gallon or more. It's
the cost of the U-Haul is going to be
exactly, yeah. So I will at least get up there and get through the rest of the boxes and pick out some things. So that's my storage unit story. But I wanted to talk about one book in particular that wasn't really the storage unit story, but this was a Grail that I picked up. It's one that I had wanted for the longest time. And it wasn't until the 4th try that I actually got it. Because what happens is, for me anyway, is, and I think, for a lot of people, who look for particular books, you decide how much you want to pay. You decide from a grade standpoint, what quality do you want the book to be in, those type of things. So I had that image in my mind of, what quality I wanted, how much I was willing to pay. And so the first time I saw this book was actually at a convention, and it was in a really good condition, and it was just way out of my budget, So, I got to look at it, I got to hold it. I got to drool on it, but then I had to give it back to the guy. Luckily it was bagged and board, so nothing. There was no damage to it.
Yeah, you didn't damage it. Good for you, Paul.
Exactly. So the second time I saw this book, I had saw it was at a I had been talking to my guy at my local comic shop, and he said that he knew someone who had this book. So I met up with a guy. I told the guy what I was looking for. We talked for a little while ahead of time. I told him what I wanted. When I got to actually see the book, the cover was detached, and I had decided I want. I know that you can still get some. The cover detached doesn't necessarily mean you're down in the 1.8 anymore, type of a thing. But I really wanted. I wanted to have the cover. I was looking for something in probably 3 to 5 range, for a grade. But I wanted the cover to be attached. I didn't want a detached cover.
Of course.
So he didn't tell me that ahead of time, and I may have forgotten to ask because I was just oh, I got this. I can see this book. So
yeah.
So the third time, I actually I found one on YouTube. Sorry, YouTube on eBay, and I ended up talking to the guy, and he was in Florida as well. So I ended up meeting the guy here in Florida and taking a look at it. And so it looked like it was in pretty good condition, for the condition that I was looking for. And so then I asked him if I could, take it out of the bags and the boards, just take a look at it, look at the pages and everything. And so the first thing I do when I look at a book is I count the pages, which is what a lot of collectors tell you to do first off the bat, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so you want 18 pages, right? Between, at least for for modern and for Silver Age.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So I counted the book. There's 17 pages. So I'm like, there's a page missing here. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, there's a page missing here. Now it didn't affect the story, but I didn't want a green label either.
No, of course.
So.
Well, hold on. What did he know? He
did not know, or at least he played it like he did not know.
Man!
If it had the page, what grade would you assign to that one? Roughly?
It probably would have been like a 4.5, 4 to 4.5.
Man, that was it right there, man.
Yeah. So now this is all of these things happened over the course of about, I want to say maybe about a year or so. Now, to step back, my local comic shop has a whole bunch of. They have like 8 different stores throughout the Central Florida, and if you have a pull box with them, they have this loyalty program where they give you a card and they do a stamp like lots of local comic shops do, and then they also give you what's called back issue bucks. So for every $10 you spend, you get a stamp and you get a back issue buck. And I had been collecting them for more than a year. And so I'm in my local comic shop, and I hear 2 of the employees talking, saying that one of their other stores, which is like 30 to 40 miles away, had just gotten in this collection. And so I'm like, oh, was it a DC collection? Was there DC? And he's like, yeah. I think there was some DC that was there. So I'm like, okay. So they told me what day they were going to put it out. So I went up there. I had this envelope full of these cards and these back issue bucks. And lo and behold, when I got there, they had this comic that I was looking for. And I would say it's just like a 3 to a 4.5 or so, depending on what they give it. But I ended up throwing all of those cards and all of the back issue bucks, and I paid like half of what they were looking to sell it for. And that's how I got my Brave and the Bold number 28.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Starro.
Yeah.
Man, that's such a sweet book, man.
That's a great story. So you'd been looking for the book. So I slightly remember when you got that, because I think you had talked about it on, was it on Kevin's show on, what does he call that show?
What's that comic book?
What's that comic book? I think, was I on that episode with you? Or
I don't know if you were or not. I remember I posted something about the book, and I remember you sent me a text saying, like, you asked me, like, is that your book? Like, I'm like, yeah, that's my book.
That's a big book. That is a big book.
Mhm.
Wow. And so you have not graded it. That's a raw copy of it. Are you happy with it in that state, or do you want to get it graded?
It is going out probably within 2 weeks. I just haven't had it. I've had other things I needed to do with some of my funds, but it'll go out probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then take it graded.
And just to be, so everybody knows, in case people don't know, or maybe they're not as fluent in DC, but Raven the Bold 28 is the first team appearance of the Justice League of America, which is Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Aquaman, and also the first appearance of Starro the Conqueror. So that's like, I mean, that's a big book. It's
like Avengers
no
1
around it.
It's Avengers 1 equivalent, right?
Yeah, well, a lot. I think it's bigger than Avengers 1.
Yeah, and getting that book actually completed for me. I now have every Justice League of America appearance from Raven the Bold all the way through to whatever issue was on the shelf last week. So I have an entirely complete run of that.
Are you kidding me?
That's awesome.
No.
Holy cow.
Crazy.
You buried the lead
crazy.
here, Paul.
Yeah.
How many books is that?
Books? We had the same question.
The Justice League of America was in Raven the Bold for 3 issues, and then it ran for 250 issues, I believe, on its own, Justice League of America. And then different incarnations. You had the Justice League Incorporated, right? You had the Justice League International. You had all those different things. You had Grant Morrison's Justice League, Mark Waid's Justice League, Brad Meltzer's Justice League. So, yeah, I have that. So,
Paul, would you say you've read them all?
Oh yeah, yep.
Wow. Do you have do you mind if I ask if you have a favorite run?
I really liked. I'm a George Perez fan, so I really liked the George Perez, his artwork. He wasn't on it for a long time because he was doing New Teen Titans at the same time, and so he kind of focused on that. But I really like his art. But as for writing, Grant Morrison and Mark Waid, they were back to back. Those two, to me, were the best incarnations of the Justice League of America, I think.
Wow.
Nice.
Very nice.
Nice.
Well, we've had the pleasure of speaking to one Mark Waid, but we haven't spoken to Grant yet. Although we did have Alex Child on, who was a co-writer on Proctor Valley Road with Grant. So, we're associated with them in some way, right?
What is that? Second cousin twice over?
The 5 steps of Grant Morrison.
Yeah, we're like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon away from him, or something like that.
5 degrees of Grant Morrison, right?
Hopefully, one day we'll get a chance to pick his brain a little too. That'd be fun.
So that's pretty cool, Paul. So it really was. I know you said you were looking for it for a little over a year, but it seems to me like you'd had that book on your list for quite some time, even before that you had made the decision to actually purchase it, right?
I definitely did. Yeah. It's one that, I growing up, the Justice League was really kind of, Justice League and Green Lantern were the 2 comics that, I actually, back when they would mail comics to your house in these, brown paper bags, basically, those 2 comics were the ones that I would, my mother, she would pay to have, to have my subscriptions renewed. And those were 2 comics I would get mailed to my house every month.
Nice. So do you have any with the subscription crease in them?
I probably do, but they're probably in a box right now in a dark storage unit in Connecticut.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty cool. It's not just the one Grail, which that is a Grail book, of course it is, but it's the Grail book that almost completes the real Grail, and that's the complete run of Justice League, which is still mind-blowing. That I was not aware that you had that going on over there, Paul.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in my collection. Whenever you can get a complete run like that. So,
that's interesting too. Real quick on that run too. How many other big books like that would you say are in that run? Like, I mean, and obviously that's probably the biggest one, but like, I guess bigger books in the run.
Yeah, Justice League really didn't have a lot of big books. I would say probably in Justice League of America, probably the other big ones would be the very first Crisis on Earth 2, which was the first crossover between the Justice Society and the Justice League. And then basically what they did in Justice League was every year they would do a crossover, between the Justice Society and the Justice League. So that's and then it wasn't really until the Justice League ended with 250, and then they brought Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, whatever his name is, and Kevin Maguire, and they did the Justice, their Justice League with Guy Gardner and Batman and the One Punch and all that good stuff.
Yep. Nice. And to follow up on the getting of the Grail. So you got that Grail, and it was well achieved. It took you a while to get there, and there was a lot of effort into getting it. So, and that's the epitome of a Grail tale, right? But I always have to ask, what's the next Grail, Paul? That's on the list.
Oh, I have one. It is. I actually have a second Grail tale that I could maybe some other day, but the one that I'm really looking for now is Adventure Comics. I believe it's 247, which is the first appearance of the Legion of Superheroes.
Oh, nice.
The classic cover with Superboy on the cover and Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl and Cosmic Boy. That's my next one.
All right, cool. And that's and what does that stem from?
I'm a big fan of the Legion of Superheroes as well, and so getting their first appearance for me would complete another. I would be able to check off another thing on my bucket list.
Very nice. Well, if anybody out there has a copy of that book that you want to just throw away, I mean, you might have already been planning to throw it away anyway, right? You were just like, DC books. I don't want anything to do with this upstart publisher. And then you're just going to throw it away. So Paul would gladly take it off your hands.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He would even pay for the shipping. Paul would even pay for the shipping of it. So please don't throw that book away. Give it to Paul.
Media mail. That's as far as
Very nice.
The horrors of media mail.
All right. That's going to do it for the Grail Tale. Paul, what a fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for letting me share it.
Now, I think everybody is still very excited about going into this last segment, and I'm talking about speculation. The speculation segment. That's it's scary for a reason, because our speculation is scary good.
You see what he did there?
See what you did there. That was great. Yeah.
Very subtle, Jake. Very subtle.
You are a master of your craft, sir.
Only subtle. All right, Jesus, what do you got?
All right, man. I got something interesting. I've been messaging you about this back and forth. Again, with my theme of zigging and zagging. Hitting them where they're not, all that jazz. So I have a book that has been optioned by a gun, or two guns, if you will.
Two guns?
Two guns. Brian and Mark Gunn, which are the cousins of James Gunn.
Okay.
So it's been optioned for Sony 2021. It's going to be in production. Rumors are starting to swirl that it's going to start production towards this summer. And it's pretty interesting. So I wanted to bring this up because I think it is a cool spec. I also think that there's a bigger conversation around it, which maybe we can touch on a little bit here. But it's about specking on something that's not traditional or not mainstream 100%. So, for example, the things that come to mind when I talk about this book, and I'll tell you guys at the end, is, you know, like Umbrella Academy, and then like the DMZ on HBO, which DMZ is a book. It also has some big stars like Rosario Dawson and I think Benjamin Bratt, I think is his name, are the big stars on the DMZ. But those books, I mean, they moved a little bit, but they didn't really move a lot. Like Umbrella Academy, I think you can find it for $100, somewhere around there raw.
It's moving more now as we get later into the seasons. As season 3 comes out, I wouldn't expect it to be $100 book anymore. Well,
that's what I'm saying. Like, but it takes time, right? It takes
Agreed.
time, and DMZ right now is like under $50, right? And HBO spent a lot of money on that. And is it going to get in the season? I don't think they picked it up yet. It might not. It might cancel after one season. Who knows? But there's more out there, right? So this book it's called The Kaiju Score. The Kaiju Score. And the writer is James Patrick, and the artist is Rem Brew. And it's basically a story. I haven't read it. I've already ordered it. I want to read it. You know, I like kaiju. So basically, if there's a heist going on and a kaiju attacks or something of that nature at the same time. So you're getting like a kaiju and a heist movie meshed into one.
Wait, is the kaiju a part of the heist?
Who knows? Maybe that's part of it. Maybe they awoken the kaiju so that they can steal all this money. And I don't know. But it's interesting enough that they got optioned. It's interesting enough that Sony is actually moving forward with it and production starting on it this year. It was optioned in 2021. So it's only been a year. So it looks like, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of fast tracked if they just optioned it and now it's already going to be in production this summer. Now, does this thing have legs? I don't know. But this book, you can get it for $15 and under, $20 and under for number one. There's variants out there. There's really cool variants. There's virgin variants. There's 1 in 15 variants that are really cool. So keep your eye out for that. I know it's in the back bins on a lot of stores, a lot of LCSs. You can get some cool books on eBay too for real cheap. I think whenever that comes out, people that like Pacific Rim, Godzilla, kaiju stuff, they're gonna want this book. So that's me zigging when people are zagging.
Hey Zeus, do you happen to know what Alfred Hitchcock's rule about guns is? Have you heard this?
Man, what is it?
So I believe, and now I could be wrong, but I believe Alfred Hitchcock's rule is if a gun options a comic book, it has to go off on screen. I think that's what it is. I think it is.
I thought it was something around, if you don't know what's happening between two characters, put a gun in one of hand or something of that nature.
No, okay. Well, the actual Hitchcock rule is if you show a gun on screen, it has to go off. It has to be used. Hitchcock always said that if a gun was shown on screen, it had to be used on screen, something along those lines. But I think for this rule, I think Hitchcock also had like an addendum where he was like, well, if one of James Gunn's relative, if a gun options a comic book, it has to go on screen.
And there's an escalating factor if it's multiple guns, right? Multiple gun relatives is what you're saying.
Yeah, they all have to go off now.
Just shows a forward thinker that Alfred Hitchcock was.
Yeah, he knew.
Exactly. And he knew about kaiju, which is really interesting.
Hitchcock did a kaiju movie.
Which one, Psycho?
No, it was the birds.
They weren't huge.
They could have been. It was just bird kaiju. All right, that's not true, but it could be true if you squint.
Yeah, or you're, if you squint.
Paul, save me, Paul. What's your speculation this week?
My speculation is actually it's two issues, but I'll give you. The first one is Infinite Crisis number 3. This is the first appearance of Jaime Reyes.
Okay.
The second one is Infinite Crisis number 5 is the second book, which is the first appearance of Blue Beetle, who is Jaime Reyes. So this one has the character Jaime Reyes Infinite Crisis number 5 has the actual character Blue Beetle, his appearance as Blue Beetle. And the reason why that's my spec is because they are making a movie, Blue Beetle, that rumors are the new people who own WB, which is the Discovery people, may actually turn it from an HBO Max movie into an actual theatrical release.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. And so typically, what I've seen anyway is that a lot of these type of books tend to go up when you get the first trailer. So if you can get it before the first trailer comes out, I would recommend that you do either one of those two. My favorite is the second printing of issue number 3, which is the black and white Jim Lee sketch variant.
Oh, nice.
So that's the one that I like. But yeah, so again, if you can pick it up before the trailer comes out, you might be able to spec your way and help to pay for your comic book collection, because it should pay for itself, right?
Exactly. Help the hobby pay for itself. We probably should have put we knew this going into this, Jesus. We should have put disclaimer at the beginning of this episode that this is a DC episode. Paul is a big DC guy who I you know what, Paul? I don't know why. For some reason, I thought maybe you were going to talk about maybe one Marvel book in this episode, but not today. Paul said to himself before he got on, he said, I'm going full DC on this one. And he did.
No. My pickups were both indie books, right?
Come on, Jake. And then he mentioned that in his 30,000 collection in Connecticut, he has 2 Ultimate Fallout.
Okay,
4.
but
now where exactly
those were like footnotes.
Can you give me the directions,
footnotes.
Paul?
What's
the number on that storage unit, Paul?
Yeah.
We had talked about this a month back, and you had actually volunteered to help me go through them, if I recall correctly, Jake.
Actually, I think we were going to record an episode from that storage unit. The sound is going to be terrible, but it will work. We'll record from inside the store. We are inside Paul's storage unit right now.
Ho, 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 ho.
All right, but I do think that's a great speculation book. I tend to agree with Paul that is something that you can get for a good price, and I do think it's worth stashing away, because by the time that trailer rolls around, people are going to be all jacked up about it.
Yeah, real quick, that's a great pickup. I recently picked up this number 3, which is the George Perez cover.
Oh yeah,
and this one, I've been looking for this one. It's really hard to find, at least for me. I haven't been able to find it down here, but I finally found one. But yeah, I love that spec. I love that spec, Paul.
Yep.
Nice job, Paul. Okay, well, I'm gonna go next. And this one is actually, I was going to just 100% completely take credit for this, but I better not. And I should give credit where it's due. So I got this little tip from our friend Lance over at Comic Book Keepers. I think this is like the 3rd episode in a row where we've mentioned Lance over at Comic Book Keepers. I almost feel like he's now like, I think he's trying to feed me stuff, information and things like that, just to keep getting his name mentioned on the show. But
Some exception, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. But Lance was a guest 3 episodes ago, 2, 3. I can't remember now. Jesus, do you know? Was it 4?
4, maybe 4, 5, 5.
You know what? He was recent. He was a recent pickup. He was a recent. Anyway, he had mentioned, because I had talked about. I had talked about Armor Wars, right? And I said, well, maybe people should be looking into. Everybody's looking over at what's happening now with Moon Knight and Doctor Strange, and everybody likes to look at that. And you're still going to be seeing a lot of speculation and sales on books related to the upcoming Thor film, but Armor Wars is kind of slunk back into the unknown. We're not really talking about it, that kind of thing. And he pointed out something that I thought was quite good. I think it was a good idea. And that is picking up a couple of books. Iron Man 284, which is the first time Rhodey dons the War Machine armor, but in this particular book, he calls himself Iron Man. And also West Coast Avengers 94. This is the first time Rhodey uses the name War Machine. So these are both undervalued books, honestly. But the thing is everybody wants to go after 282, right? 282 has a really cool cover, but that is the War Machine armor worn by Tony Stark, not Rhodey. And I think that's a distinction that I think is worth making. I think it's a cool book. I would probably go out on a limb to say it is a cooler cover than 284, but I think West Coast Avengers 94 is a great one. I really like that one. Anyway, so I think that it's worth noting. We've talked about, I had mentioned some of the Armor Wars. I had mentioned some of the those books in the past. And in this particular case, I would say, covering your bases with these really cheap books. I mean, these are back bin books you can get for $1 or $2, right? Iron Man 284 and West Coast Adventures 94. Those that would be my speculation for the week.
94 has been creeping up, man. That one, like you said, it's a really cool cover. It's yellow as well, and it has him front and center. But this is, to me, this is another. I think this one's worse than Incredible Hulk 180, 181, because, like you mentioned, at the beginning, the community spoke, and 282 was a book to have if you wanted War Machine. I mean, War Machine is spray painted over the Iron Man logo, right? And it's a really cool cover. And I'm not saying that because I have one. I'm not saying that at all because I have one, Jake. So I just want to let you know that. But the other two are more in line with the actual character of War Machine being James Rhodes and picking up that armor and that suit, right? So which one is it, right? The one that the community has spoken about a long time ago, that's not necessarily the actual character, or is it the one where it's the actual character picking up the mantle and how important that is within the MCU and also within the Marvel comics? So really interesting, man. Those are some really cool pickups. 284 is not that exciting to me as far as the cover goes. I'm going to be looking for West Coast Avengers 94. I think that's a really cool cover.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, I'm looking at one on eBay right now that is in okie dokie condition, and that's an official condition, by the way, okie dokie. CGC,
yeah, it's in between like a 9.0 and 9.2, right? Somewhere on there.
Yeah, it's in between ooh and it's okie dokie, and I'm looking at it's $9.99. So, and shipping is $3.19, which means it may come creased. I don't know for that price.
Medium mail.
Medium mail.
But I agree with you on that. The overall 284 is, I don't know if that's going to be the cover that people ever go nuts about. It's not the best cover in the world. It's not ugly by any means. But for honestly, go find this in a back bin, stash it for $1 kind of thing. But go with West Coast Avengers 94, great cover. And also just because I'm going to throw it out there, another book that really has not seen a lot of movement, and that is War Machine #1. War Machine #1, you can get that for $5. And it has a foil edition variant. There's a foil edition variant because it came out in 94. Everything in 94 had a foil edition variant. That's another cheap book. That is a War Machine #1. I guess you could consider that a War Machine key. Right? It is not a first of anything besides the first solo series. But once again, if you can store that book, stash that book for $1 or $2, definitely worth it. And that foil edition variant is actually really cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of those first solo series books, eventually when these other, when their actual keys go up, they're gonna be worth something. Like we talked about it too in the past. The X-Men ones, like the Rogue, the Nightcrawler, the first solo series of those guys.
Gambit, the first Gambit, that one's gonna.
Yeah. Just pick up. They're $5 books, man, $8 books. Pick them up.
Now, Paul already has all of these books in his, what is it? What do you call it? A compound, Paul? Is
Exactly.
has it escalated to a compound at this point?
Is there a moat? Is there a moat? Is what I want to know. Because
you would not believe how much sharpshooters cost.
They've been really going up with inflation, huh?
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Spec Tales. Paul, before we do our goodbyes, I'd like you to let everybody know where they can find you on the YouTubes and the internets.
Sure. On internet, I am on Instagram at Cook, Cooke, is an E at the end of my name, 1616. And on YouTube, you can find me if you just search on Sector 2815. So
awesome. Hey, everybody go out there and give Paul a follow. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Paul, I genuinely one of the kindest men in comics, and that shines through in everything Paul does. You can reach out to Paul. He will talk to you, and he'll talk comics for days on end if you let him. And he's a very good friend. So I highly recommend everybody go out, give him a subscribe on YouTube, and his videos are also quite good and entertaining. When Paul decides to actually hit record. I got to give you a little bit of crap about that, Paul.
That's very kind of you to say that, Jake. I appreciate it. But
you're welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I totally enjoyed this, and again, hanging out with you and Jesus is always a great time.
Thanks again, Paul, and everybody else out there. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us on Instagram at spec_tales_podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at spectalespod. And if you'd like to email us, you can email us at spectalespodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great week.